Elvis was often sick and tired because he wanted to give his best performances for his fans. He had different doctors in different cities, but it was hard to control the drugs he took. Some doctors would give him what he thought he needed in exchange for concert tickets. Not everyone in his group tried to stop the drugs from coming in, just like with the women who visited him. Sometimes, one woman would leave in the morning, and another would arrive in the evening, and they didn't always know about each other. The Memphis Mafia, the group that helped him, didn't always work together smoothly. Elvis had a lot on his plate, including his career and health. He also had a daughter, Lisa Marie, who lived with her mom Priscilla in California. They would visit each other, with Lisa Marie sometimes going to Elvis's shows in Las Vegas. During summers and holidays, Lisa Marie would stay at Graceland, their home. She was close with Elvis's girlfriend, Linda Thompson. Elvis tried to be a good dad, even attending Lisa Marie's parent-teacher conferences. However, his behavior became more unpredictable. One time, he broke a TV and Lisa Marie asked him about it. He said he just turned it off because he didn't like what was on. In February 1974, Elvis's daughter Lisa Marie was sick and couldn't go to Las Vegas for her birthday. She needed a tonsillectomy, and Elvis was in Los Angeles for it. He was happy he could give her the medical care she needed. When Elvis was young, his parents couldn't even afford to see a doctor, let alone pay for surgery. He promised himself that when he grew up, he would make sure his loved ones had good health care. He had his own private doctor, and he took pride in only taking medicine that was prescribed by a doctor. People sometimes misunderstood his use of prescription medication as special treatment in healthcare. Lisa Marie, Elvis's daughter, had a successful surgery. Elvis had problems with his tonsils and throat, which sometimes made it hard for him to talk. Doctors suggested removing his tonsils, but he was scared it would change his voice. Lisa Marie didn't have to go through the same pain. In September 1974, Elvis started his fourth tour and had already done around 130 shows. Some of the performances weren't great, and he had long talks with the audience that weren't usual for him. His relationship with Linda Thompson was changing, and he started dating Shalia Ryan when Linda wasn't around. His shows were sometimes amazing, and other times not so good. He was also having health problems like a high temperature in one show and the flu in another. His body was having trouble fighting off infections. Elvis didn't like to talk about his health problems with others. People in Elvis's group, called the Memphis Mafia, talked about times when drugs were a big part of the story, but they didn't always know the full truth. They spent a lot of time with Elvis, but they didn't know how bad his health problems were because of his drug use. This led to some confusion and stories that weren't completely true. Elvis's health was getting worse, and he was taking a lot of prescription drugs. His dad, Vernon, was really worried about him and asked a doctor named Dr. Nick to come and help. When Dr. Nick arrived, Elvis was having trouble standing and moving. Dr. Nick thought another doctor had given Elvis medicine that caused his blood pressure problems. By the end of a performance, Elvis's condition hadn't improved, and even the people who played music with him thought he didn't have much left to give. He seemed tired and didn't know what to do on stage. Dr. Nick was the only doctor who knew how bad Elvis's health problems were and tried to help him. But medicine in the 1970s wasn't perfect, and Dr. Nick didn't know about all of Elvis's hidden health issues. Other doctors just gave Elvis what he wanted without thinking about the whole situation. Elvis also used a book called the PDR to learn about medicines, which could be confusing and make it hard to understand everything. So, it's important to consider all the information and not just part of it when looking at Elvis's health situation. Elvis liked to learn a lot about health and medicine from books. He wanted to understand his body and how to treat it. This was a good thing because it's important to be your own health advocate. But sometimes, Elvis wanted quick fixes for his problems instead of proper treatment. A doctor named Dr. Nick gave him a book about the colon when Elvis was having issues, but there were times when Elvis fell for fake health scams. Even though he knew a lot about drugs and his health, he didn't always make the best choices. Elvis tried a special sleep diet made by a doctor named Dr. Gainham twice. This diet involved being sedated while you slept, and there was a special room in the doctor's house for famous people like Elvis to try it. In October 1974, Elvis was sedated for 3 weeks. A friend named Shalia stayed with him during this time. After spending Thanksgiving with another girlfriend, Linda Thompson, Elvis went back to Vegas for another 2 weeks of the sleep diet. Linda said it felt strange because unusual and unhealthy things were considered normal there. Elvis had some health problems, especially with his colon. Not moving much and not eating well made it worse. A doctor, Dr. Nick, said that exercise is important for the colon to work properly. Elvis was often in bed and not feeling well. A friend, Jerry, talked to Elvis and his doctor about how much better he was when he was taking care of himself. Elvis got defensive and didn't want to listen to his friend's advice. Elvis didn't listen to Jerry or Dr. Nick when they suggested things. When he went back to Memphis, Dr. Nick wanted him to check his liver because it was clear something was wrong with it. Elvis was also having trouble sleeping and had a lot of water retention, making it hard for him to even zip up his boots. His hands and feet were swollen, and he felt a lot of pain. A girl named Barbara Lee saw him towards the end of 1974 and was shocked by how much he had changed. She said he was very overweight and his face was badly swollen. In just a few years, Elvis looked like he had aged 20 years. Dr. Nick wanted to do some tests, but Elvis didn't listen to him. Dr. Nick got frustrated and said, "I was getting fed up." In 1975, when Elvis turned 40, people talked a lot about it. It was a big deal back then, and some people even said mean things about his weight and appearance. They said he was fat and 40. Elvis felt upset about turning 40 because in those days, 40 was seen as getting old, unlike now when many people get married and start families at that age. Elvis spent his birthday quietly in his room. His road manager, Joe Esposito, remembered that Elvis was bothered by turning 40 and the negative comments about him. For the past 5 years, Elvis had a tradition of performing in Las Vegas in January. But in 1975, because he was having health issues and acting strangely, the Colonel moved the show to March. After turning 40, Elvis should have been performing in Vegas twice a night, but instead, he ended up in the hospital. He had trouble breathing, probably from taking too many medications. People thought it was his liver, but it might have been both the liver and the drugs. Sonny West, a friend of Elvis, said that the doctor told the public it was liver problems, but the real issue was Elvis's drug addiction. During his hospital stay, they did a liver biopsy, which wouldn't have been done just to fool people about the cause of his illness. When Elvis went to the hospital, they found out he still had a drug called Demerol in his body and needed to go through a process to get it out. At first, they thought his breathing problems were because of the medicine, but they also found out that a big part of his colon and a swollen stomach were pressing against his lungs, making it hard for him to breathe. A doctor named Dr. Lawrence Rubel did a liver biopsy on Elvis. Linda Thompson, his girlfriend at the time, was there and said Elvis had to lie still for a whole day after the procedure. A nurse named Marion J. Koch also wrote about it in her book but didn't mention the results. Linda remembered that the test showed no signs of cancer. The liver biopsy showed that Elvis's liver was enlarged and fatty. This could be because of too many prescription drugs or other health issues like autoimmune disorders, inflammatory bowel disease, and obesity. Elvis had 4 out of 6 risk factors for these conditions. Some people thought his liver problem was inherited from his mom. Even when he was in the hospital, doctors kept sending him pills. The doctor in charge, Dr. Nick, didn't think Elvis was an addict because he recovered quickly from detox, didn't have physical signs of withdrawal, and was psychologically dependent but not physically. When Elvis went back to Graceland, a nurse named Tish was in charge of giving him his medicine. He couldn't have the whole week's supply at once, so Tish made 3 small packets of medicine for each day. She lived nearby in a trailer and either gave him the medicine herself or asked someone else at Graceland to do it. Elvis didn't like this, but maybe he knew he needed help with his medicine problem. He had a lot of health issues, and the medicine he took could be addictive. His first packet had medicine for allergies, high blood pressure, diabetes, kidney problems, colon issues, and arthritis. The second packet had just 1 sleeping pill, and the third packet had extra sleeping medicine if he needed it. For a 40-year-old man, that's a lot of health problems and medicine. After leaving the army, Elvis's health got better. He loved karate and started playing racquetball too. A man named Dean, Dr. Nick's son, taught him racquetball and they became friends. Elvis even built a racquetball court at his home, Graceland. This helped him stay active. Elvis also spent a lot of money on things like buying 14 Cadillacs in one day and wanting to own many airplanes. His most famous plane was named Lisa Marie after his daughter. He bought it for $250,000 and spent an extra $800,000 to make it fancy, with things like gold-plated seatbelt buckles and gold bathroom fixtures. In total, he spent $1.2 million to buy the plane and $3.9 million to fix it up. It took more than 6 months to finish the project and get the plane ready to fly. After a big show in Vegas in March 1975, Elvis did a lot of concerts. He performed from April to July with many shows in a short time. These tours were tiring and had some problems. Elvis sometimes said things on stage that weren't nice to the backup singers and made some musicians upset with his comments. A bass guitar player named Duke Bardwell left because he felt embarrassed and thought Elvis was being mean. Duke still tried to be loyal to Elvis, even though he believed that not everyone around him cared about his well-being. Duke thought they only cared about themselves.